For this session, what we're going to do is we're going to look towards programming a typical progressive house, progressive trance type loop. Now, as with the house loop that we programmed in the third session, I'm keeping both these under one label because, well, there isn't that vast a difference between the techniques that are used to produce each of these genres. The timbres are obviously quite different, but you will find that the techniques that they employ are generally the same for both. So, depending on what you want to accomplish, will depend on the timbres that you use to produce them. Okay, now, in the previous session, we looked at the use of ambiguous displacement within loops that aren't particularly fast or complex. And while I said you can use it on faster genres, a better approach when you're working around 128 to 135, which is typical of these genres, is the use of metrical dissonance. Now, as with the initial modulation movement, the subliminal movement that we discussed in the third session, and the ambiguous displacement that we discussed in the previous session, metrical dissonance is another essential technique that you've got to have in your repertoire, because it really can breathe life into rhythms, and it's used an awful lot in progressive genres, tech house and minimal and techno as well. So what is metrical dissonance? Well, on a very fundamental level, it's based around the idea that we as human beings like to work and calculate everything in even numbers. Let me explain what I mean by that. When we write music, for example, we tend to put emphasis on beats 2 and 4. We may drop in notes before or after this, but when we do, they're always ghost notes, and we always tend to lay the most emphasis on the second and fourth beat by dropping claps there, or snares, or some other instrument, but we always try to emphasize beats 2 and 4. Now, when we build songs, we tend to write in musical stems in bars. We'd write in 4 bars, 8 bars, 16 bars, 32 bars. And if we ever introduce an instrument at, say, bar 15, for example, it always sounds too early when you listen back to it. If we introduce a sound coming in at bar 17, then it sounds too late when it comes in. It's because we expect everything to happen on an even number, because we're just naturally drawn to even numbers, and we tend to feel comfortable with them. Now, the reason for that is that everything about us is even, and it all derives from our heartbeat and the fact that we have 2 legs and 2 arms. Our heartbeat, for example, it's thump, 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 thump. When we walk, it's left, right, left, right. Everything happens in evens, and this even feeling is so ingrained into our genetic code that even if we hear the ticking of a clock, our mind will impose a tock on that, even though in reality the clock's only tick, tick, tick. Our mind puts the tock on, so we've got tick, tock, tick, tock. Now, what happens is basically metrical dissonance, it takes advantage of that feeling. It takes advantage of us only thinking in evens, and we employ it into our patterns by instead of repeating after 2, 4 or 8 bars, what we do is we repeat after 3 or 6. Or we write patterns that are only 3 beats long, and then repeat that with patterns that are playing 4 beats long. Now, in some ways that could be viewed as a simple type of polyrhythm, but it's hugely influential on how the rhythm sounds, because our minds try to count it in evens, and because it isn't an even rhythm, it adds a strange and interesting kind of driving surge to the music. Now, to better understand what I'm saying there, I think the best thing to do is program a rhythm and add some of this metrical dissonance into the rhythm, so you can basically see how it's applied and hear the effect that it does. So what I think we'll do is we'll start by laying down our kick. Again, we're in Logic. We've got Ultra Beat on every channel, and I've laid down doubles of all the tracks. Now, you may notice there's no tambourines there. That's just nothing special. I've not heard a progressive house track with tambourines in for a good while. So what I'm going to do is we'll start by knocking a kick in, and it's the same as before, a kick on every beat. So we'll just knock that in there. Now, one thing I have noticed with the progressive house I've been listening to, now I need to point out here that I was listening to these on Beatport, and by the time you receive this DVD, which will be 3 or 4 months down the line, the whole genre might have changed. So just bear that in mind. But the ones I heard, they didn't have too sharp an attack on. They were quite soft on the kicks. So we'll play this back and we'll see if we can find something with a less sharper kick. I'll just copy that across again. You know, it's got too sharp with that kick. That's far too sharp there. That's not bad. Well, that's okay. What we'll do here is I'll show you another technique about layering kicks. I'll just turn that down a little. It's a bit loud. We're going to use this second track here, and we're going to drop kicks down on it again. We'll use them two, and we'll throw down our SPL on each of these tracks. What we want to do is we want to take the attack away from this first one and just give it a bit more sustain. And just drop the attack a little on that. The benefit here is if it doesn't pull through the mix, we can always tighten that, or we can bring it back. I think that'll do there. And what we'll do now is we'll put claps on 2 and 4. So no, I haven't sampled that from Rolls Royce, or that one either. No, that's not a bad timbre there. I think what we'll do there is we'll get rid of that. We'll copy that down. Now, just to discuss a quick trick here with claps, what you can do is choose one of your tracks, delay it a little, pan one left, the other one right, or right and left, and you create a stereo clap like that. I'm not interested in doing that in this particular genre, so I'll just set that back to as it was. We'll just turn them down a little. Now what we want to do there is we want to introduce our movement, but rather than use filters for this, I think what we're going to do is we're going to try pitch. Now, I think the best way we can do that is if we take those two out of that one, and then we go to this one and we take that one out there and that one out there, to make sure these volumes are the same, otherwise it might come across a bit, might give us the wrong impression. Yeah, now I think what we'll do there is we'll put a pitch shifter on. Again, we don't want to go too mad here. Can you hear that? I think what we'll do just there is just give me a second with this. I just want to send these two out to a bus. It's just so we can control both of these at once. Oops. There's our claps, and what we'll do is we'll send both. Oops, we'll just send these to no output. Send them right to the bus, and then what I'll do is, and these with no output, and we'll create a bus for them, and we'll send them right out to the bus. That's all that's kicks. Basically, it's just so we can control the volume with these now. Now, as I mentioned before, what we do is when we're going to add dissonance, we usually want to add it to high frequency instruments, the same as we did in where we added our ambiguity in the previous session. So what I want to do is use our open hats and possibly our closed hats and maybe even the shakers. Obviously, we'll see how it goes, but what we'll do is we need to create some metrical dissonance here in these open high hats now. I think the first thing we want to do then is we'll knock in some notes. Now, obviously, it should go without saying these notes need to have some rhythm to them, because if we just threw in a rhythm like that, oops, there's a bit of rhythm there already, but if we just threw in a rhythm like that, it wouldn't matter how far out we sent that, because it would still sound the same. So what we need to do is we need to inject some emotion, some rhythm into that. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at injecting some kind of rhythm into it. I'm not happy with those sounds. I think they're a bit too house, those sounds, so we'll find something a bit more progressive first. So that's a bit more. That's a bit more on the progressive edge. Move that there. What we'll do is we'll add another one of these. I'll say starting there on that one. That one might fit. Now what we're going to do, it sounds alright, that it's got a little bit of rhythm. We don't need to go too mad and create, absolutely mental rhythm. There's no need for that. Basically what we are going to do now is, I've just deleted these two ends. We're going to add some metrical dissonance to all this. I'm going to make it all quite complicated. What I'm going to do, I'm going to drag that. I can just grab that edge. Let's do it here if I have to. Oops. Right, what we'll do is we'll make it easy. We'll select them all and we'll just loop it. Now, for those who don't use Logic, all that means is that all these are now looped continually on and on and on and on. But what it also means is that I can go into this open hi-hat here and I can basically set that to there. Now you see, if you watch there and see as I move this, you see I'm making it smaller. Compared to the rest of the loops, I'm making this just that bit smaller. So what I do is I set that to there. Now we set that back to there. Now when this plays, these will repeat over the natural bars, but this will only repeat and stop on the third there, and then start repeating from there at that point. Now immediately that's going to knock everything out of sync. So let's have a listen to how that comes across. I'll just set that over 5 bars. Let's have a listen. Now can you hear that? that's a typical example of progressive house. That I think what we will do is we'll add a bit of filter freak onto that. Sound toys. Let's get the filter freak up. We'll do again is take it to rhythm. 30 BPM again. Bloody hell. There we go. We'll set that to 1 bar for now, and we'll edit this. We'll set that there. We'll send that just about there, and then modulation. We just want that bit of solo that. And there we go. We've introduced a bit of metrical dissonance in there. I think it may be worthwhile backing that up with some closed hats. So I think what we'll do is we'll knock in closed hats here. Again, it's just a simple rhythm. This discussed plenty of times in the dance music manual. That's okay, I like that. Right, what we've got to do, we're going to have to simplify that rhythm right down, I think. I'll take one off there. Let's see if we can build a bit of a rhythm with this now. Set that one out. Set that one out. Set that one out. Oh, I like that bit there. That. Yeah, we'll have that. What we'll do basically now is notice how we're not going over to the full bar there. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring that back. I'm going to have that loop in there, which again is going to create some dissonance in there. Can you hear that? That's affecting the rhythm there. And what we'll do is we'll add some echo voice to that. This is the trick they're all using in progressive house at the moment. Obviously they use it in other genres as well, but this is particularly evident in the progressive house. Of our modulation on that as well. A bit of filter modulation, I think. Front end off them just to push them back in the mix a little. If you've watched the mixing DVDs and the trance DVDs, then you'll already know that the transients play a major role in the creation of music, and just playing with the attack can really push sounds around a mix without having to play with EQ and ruin the sound. That's not sounding bad at all, that. I think I can hear it'll have to be in time, this one, I imagine. I think if we knock this one out of time, it might all go a bit awry, but I just want to get a shaker in there. I think I can hear some kind of a shaker in them. Copy that across. Tambourine. Oh, I think it is a tambourine there. I just like the sound of it, so I think we'll throw that one in. We do need to lose the front edge off that, though, and just dull the transient off that. It's a bit much. Oh, that's much better. High-end energy in that. What we'll do is arrange and remove some of that, I think. What I can hear in there is a snare. And what we'll do is we'll just call up a software instrument. Let's throw it down there. Use Ultra Beat. This may not work. It may be a bit too heavy for what I'm thinking here, but there's nothing wrong giving it a go. Let's get rid of that. Let's throw that in. Ooh. That might be okay there. What I want to do, basically, I just want to throw in quite a long note. We'll throw that. I don't know. I'll throw it there for now. Basically, what I've applied there is a reverse reverb, which is slowly sweeping up. I was trying to build a slight roll up to where it rolls round again. I'm sure that sounds right. Ooh, sounds like Poltergeist. That might be better. No, I don't think that's working. So what we'll do is we'll leave that one out. But there we go. I mean, basically, I've introduced you there to the idea of metrical dissonance, which we've introduced there on our open hats there. I don't think them hats are being used, so I'll just take that away. They're not being used, so I'll take that away. And they're not being used, so I'll take that away. Now, again, that does look like a very simple loop, but as I keep stressing, there are instruments that are going to go over the top of this, and we don't want to have the entire concentration on the rhythmic section. The rhythmic section is only a piece, a very important piece, but it's still just a piece. Let's just have a listen to that now then. Now if I drop out our two dissonant parts there, now again, that loop is not 100% spot on, and I could actually do with spending another couple of hours on it. But as I mentioned earlier, time's against us on this DVD, and I want to spend that time showing you the vital techniques that have become pretty much required for programming loops. And that's a very, very popular loop in progressive, and also in tech house, which we will be looking at in. I think we'll look at that in the next session. But like I said, I think the Thomas could do with a little more tweaking. A little bit of EQ mixed down, some panning. Well, the basic ideas there, and you can hear the metrical dissonance there that's really added to the loop. So I think what we'll do now then is we'll move on to the next session, and what we'll do is we'll look at how all the techniques that we've looked at up to this point can be used to just create one genre, which is tech house, minimal techno music. So let's move on to the next session and have a good look at that.